In this video, I want to present to you what I think is a crucial intellectual and philosophical synthesis between two radical ideas that have come to light in recent years, namely Jordan Peterson's theory of meaning as the fundamental orienting instinct in human beings, and Brett Weinstein's theory of evolution by lineage selection. Both of these ideas sound abstract, but this synthesis that I'm about to demonstrate for you serves as the intellectual scaffolding that surrounds and helps me understand the most intensely meaningful aspects of my own life. And I want to present these ideas in a clear, concise way that will plant the seed in your mind to help you appreciate it as I have. So here's the idea in its sterilizingly oversimplified form. The sense of meaning that you feel when you are most engaged with the world around you, whether it's during a session of creative work, or when you're fully immersed in the climactic scene of a compelling movie, or when you experience the intense feelings you get from flirting with a crush or being intimate with a long-term partner. That experience of meaning is making direct contact with, and is in fact derived from, the metaphysical foundation of reality itself.
This is another example of, I think, where the physical and the metaphysical touch.
And because that sounds like spiritual mumbo-jumbo, let me lay out the purely scientific case for this idea. The central claim that Jordan Peterson makes is that just as the entirety of material reality is made up of three fundamental particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons, the reality that we experience, called phenomenological reality, is made up of two foundational elements, which he calls order and chaos.
You might say, well, what's the best way of conceptualizing reality at the highest level of abstraction? What is reality? There's this old Taoist symbol, the yin and yang symbol, So there's a black serpent, and it has a white dot in it, and there's a white serpent, and it has a black dot in it, and they're tail to tail. And that whole symbol is Tao. And Tao means a bunch of things. It means potential. It means the way of life. So to live in Tao is to live in the proper manner. And you kind of live on the border between the black serpent and the white serpent. And then you say, well, what are those two things? Well, they're the two ultimate categories of reality, yin and yang. How would you translate that into English? Well, masculine, feminine, that's one translation. But a better one, I would say, is order and chaos. And for the Taoist, being is made up of these two elements, order and chaos. And the reason for that is quite straightforward. The reason for that is wherever you go, and whenever you live, and whoever you are, each environment that you're in is composed of things you understand, and things that work the way you expect them to, and things you do not understand, and that can pull the rug out from you at any moment. And so you can say in some sense that these symbolic representations are representations of the most unchanging elements of being.
Now, this dichotomy between order and chaos may not sound obvious or intuitive when you first hear it, just like it's not obvious or intuitive how the entire diverse range of physical objects in the world are all made up of the same three fundamental particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons. But a key piece of evidence for the reality of this claim is the fact that your brain, which is inextricably linked to your conscious experience, is bifurcated. It has two hemispheres.
Now you say, well, is that real? Is it really that the world is made out of order and chaos? Well, here's something weird. You have two hemispheres, right? And hypothetically, they were selected by the processes of natural evolution, right? They were selected by reality. Well, you have a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. So it's kind of like, well, reality must have two elements, because why would you need two hemispheres otherwise? And they do have relatively separate consciousnesses, those two hemispheres. Think, well, okay, we've been selected to have this bifurcated view of reality. Well, what are they specialized for? Turns out the left hemisphere is specialized for those places where your routines work. That's the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere is specialized for all those places you go when you don't know what you're doing. So the left hemisphere is specialized for order, and the right hemisphere is specialized for chaos. And so then you might think, well, does that mean that the world, being, is really made out of order and chaos? It's like, well, if you use the Darwinian logic, that's what it means.
I cannot overstate the significance of this argument. I think this observation from Peterson is more important and consequential than all of his self-help stuff combined. And the reason this observation reaches down into the metaphysical foundations of reality itself is because this bifurcation is not something that's unique to the human brain, but is found in every living organism with anything approximating a nervous system.
From an evolutionary point of view, we know that all the brains we've looked at, going way back into prehistory, all seem to have this divided structure. And indeed, the oldest neural network, that of a sea anemone called Nematostella vectensis, 700 million years old, is already asymmetrical, which is a fascinating fact. You know, why would it be asymmetrical? The world isn't asymmetrical in that way.
The physical world may not be asymmetrical in that way, but the world of experience is asymmetrically divided.
They're the two ultimate categories of reality, yin and yang, order and chaos.
And given that even rudimentary living organisms appear to be adapted to this landscape of order and chaos, it means the dualistic structure of reality is deeper than a mere human conception. Order and chaos are not real because the human brain experiences reality in that dichotomy. Order and chaos are features of reality that pre-existed the human brain and played a central role, if not the central role, in structuring it. And here is where things get interesting. Building upon this purely evolutionary argument, we can introduce into the mix a crucially important idea put forward by Brett Weinstein, the concept of lineage selection. Let me quickly explain why this is so important. The current paradigm of evolutionary theory is that organisms behave with a single inexorable and unchangeable goal: to propagate as many genes into the next generation as possible. And without getting into the details, objections to this idea have embroiled the field of evolutionary biology into a civil war between two camps: the kin selectionists versus the group selectionists.
This is one of the rare cases where I actually read material by either side, and as I read their position, I go, yeah, I buy that. And then I read the other side and I go, yeah, I kind of buy that.
The important thing to know about all this is that Brett Weinstein has proposed a unifying solution to this conflict called lineage selection.
But my claim is that my field is divided between two camps that are incorrect. So I would argue that the right way of viewing this is something called lineage selection. Now, a lineage is an individual and all of that individual's descendants.
Weinstein uses the example of a prehistoric band of hunter-gatherers to illustrate this concept.
Let's think about this band if everybody took a narrow view of their own contribution to the next generation, right? If all the males did was try to leave as many genes in the next generation as possible by whatever means necessary. That's a band full of conflict. But the other thing is, if your band blinks out of existence 5 generations down the road, taking all of your great-great-great-great-grand offspring, then you have not succeeded. The advantage you got within one generation is completely erased by the loss of the population within which you were embedded. So the point is, if we really understood the mindset of the individual in rational evolutionary terms, we would understand that they, in some sense, will be built. They will be wired and programmed to behave in such a way both to advance their own genetic interests and to protect the long-term population well-being that allows those genes to circulate.
The key insight of lineage selection is understanding that instead of organisms behaving with the goal of propagating as many genes as possible into the next generation, organisms behave with the goal of passing as many genes as far into future generations as possible. This means that evolution did not just program us with behaviors to facilitate the well-being of ourselves and our offspring, but the well-being of our future descendants, our lineage. And that lineage extends as far into the future as we can imagine. And if you haven't caught on already, this perspective, which I believe is correct, implies something that is paradigm shifting in how we understand history and the development of human culture and what that means for our everyday lives. If lineage selection is correct, that means that we are the descendants of people whom evolution selected to engage in behaviors whose positive consequences would not be reaped until centuries later. A perfect example of this is those people who built incredible cultural artifacts that have been handed down to us through the generations.
You look at these magnificent cathedrals that our civilization built over the centuries. You know, some of those, they're still building this Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, right? And it's an amazing building. I think it's going to take them like 300 years to build that. You know, people in the Middle Ages, they'd start building a cathedral and they think, we'll be done this in 300 years. You know, you imagine the vision that it took to invest in something like that. We look at quarterly reports. We can't think 300 years into the future to build something of that kind of remarkable balance of light and structure, because they're representing something about the proper structure of being, which is something like the proper balance between light and structure.
So just think about it for a second. The stories and belief systems and traditions that compelled our ancestors to begin building cathedrals that they nor their children would ever see completed are not pathological mind viruses, but instead these belief systems are compendiums of evolutionary wisdom that are central to who we are as a species and key to our success in flourishing and thriving. Just as evolution hardwired beavers to build dams that get passed down to generations over hundreds of years, or termites to build mounds that have supported their descendants for thousands of years, evolution hardwired your brain to value, participate, and bind yourself to religious and cultural ideas that have been passed down and evolved over generations.
Beaver ponds are created by beavers to facilitate their own ecology, and they are passed down to next generation beavers, right? This piece of ecology is handed down, sometimes over the course of decades or even 100 years. These ponds, these alterations of the landscape are handed down as an inheritance to future generations of beavers. And that, to me, looks very much like a lineage handing down a belief system that results in it being ecologically effective.
You have to understand that our relationship to these religious belief systems is as fundamental and hardwired into us as our relationship to food or oxygen. A defining element of being a beaver is building dams, and a defining element of being human is the capacity for religious experience or meaningful experience, because those are just two different ways of saying the same thing. Human beings live and die based on their sense of meaning, period. And here's where we tie Jordan Peterson back in so we can put the final nail in the cross and burn this idea into your soul. Remember, Jordan Peterson's theory is that your entire nervous system, even in its most primordial and ancient forms, is adapted to the metaphysical reality of order and chaos, and the symbol of the Tao is representative of that reality. But the other key philosophical point that Peterson makes, the one that he's arguably most famous for, is that your sense of meaning is activated and felt most deeply when you engage in behavior that orients you in the optimal place between order and chaos.
And then the final thing that's quite interesting about this symbol, this is a mind-bogglingly brilliant idea, is that the optimal position for a human being isn't in chaos or in order, because if it's too much order, then it's totalitarian, and if it's too much chaos, then it's disgust and fear and emotional pain and depression. So where's the proper place? And the Taoist answer is right on the line, where you have one foot in order so that you're fairly stable, and you have another foot in chaos so that new and interesting and compelling and transforming things are happening to you. And one of the things that you might note is that your nervous system basically tells you when you're there, and the way it tells you is by making you interested in whatever it is that you're engaged in, because the fact that the thing that you're engaged in grips you, which is really an unconscious process, you can't really control that, it's something that happens to you, is because your nervous system, which is actually adapted to the environment of chaos and order, is telling you that if you're engaged and interested, you are in the place where the balance between chaos and order is perfect.
Meaning is a consequence of your nervous system telling you when the action that you're engaged in is putting you in the place of optimal balance between order and chaos. And the thing about action is that every action is done in the context of a goal, what Peterson refers to sometimes confusingly as a hierarchy of values. When you get up to go to the bathroom, when you cook yourself a meal, when you go on a date, every action is a means to an end, and every end is a bigger means to a bigger end. And the ultimate end of every action, as far as you're concerned, is to survive or live a good life or be a good person.
Now, you could say, you're in this class and you're listening to some information. You need to listen to the information so that you can do well on the assignments, so that you can do well in the class. You need to do well in your classes so that you can finish up your degree. You need to finish up your degree so that you can find your place in the world. You need to do that so that you're financially stable and maybe you can start a family and have a life, and that's all part of being a good person, something like that. And so that's a hierarchy of goals, and you might say that being a good person would be the thing, however vaguely thought through, that's at the top of that hierarchy. And then when you're doing things that serve that ultimate purpose, then you're going to find those more meaningful, and that meaning is actually produced as a consequence of the engagement of this exploratory circuit that's nested right down in your hypothalamus. It's really, really old. It's as old as thirst, and it's as old as hunger. It's really an old system.
The reason that you feel meaning when you're engaged in behaviors that serve an ultimate goal is because your brain, as a consequence of 6 billion years of evolution by lineage selection, is sophisticated enough to know that the specific action you're engaged in is in alignment with higher order values.
But you do orient yourself, and I think what you do is it's engagement. It's like, does this seem meaningful and deep and engaging? Yes. Then it's an indication that it's serving multiple masters simultaneously. So maybe both socially and also temporally.
Meaning is an indication that you are serving multiple masters, both socially and temporally. And what is, according to lineage selection, the ultimate goal of any human being? It's deeper than being a good person, and it's deeper than even survival. It's about doing things that ensure the flourishing of you and the lineage of which you are a part of.
I would say your lineage argument, in some sense, actually likely makes that case more strongly, because all of your actions are bounded in space and time. But you have to operate locally in a way, and this is like the lineage idea, in a way that doesn't disturb your next local action or the one after that. You have to think about your action now, its consequences immediately, its consequences in a day, a week, a month, a year, and that shades off forever.
So let me tie all of this together so that you can genuinely understand how critical this synthesis is. When our ancestors aspired to create great works of art, philosophy, and literature, or when they imparted moral beliefs onto their children that would eventually evolve into the ideas of inalienable human rights enshrined into law, they were doing all that because it was meaningful to them, because the religious belief systems that were handed down to them from their ancestors imbued those actions with meaning by establishing the hierarchy of values in which those actions were contextualized. Leonardo da Vinci would not have committed himself to producing art had he not been part of a culture that valued art. And just like the beavers building a dam to hand down to the next generation, the culture that valued the art Da Vinci dedicated his life to was handed down to him and his lineage by their ancestors. And we today are the modern inheritors of that culture. And what this means for you, the person watching this video, is that when you engage in your craft, or when you form healthy relationships, or when you learn something new, the meaning that you derive from those experiences as a consequence of being situated in that optimal balance between order and chaos, and being in service to an ultimate purpose, is an indication that you are in contact with a metaphysical process that predates the human mind, and is in a real sense in service of the flourishing of you and your lineage, which, in case you haven't figured it out already, includes the entire human race. Whether you believe in evolution or you believe in Adam and Eve, all human beings come from the same common ancestor, and therefore we're all part of the same lineage. Now, whether or not you believe in this process of meaning is irrelevant, in the same way that believing you are full when you're hungry is irrelevant. Your sense of hunger remains regardless of your beliefs, and your sense of meaning operates far beyond the will of your nihilistic rationalizations about whether or not meaning is a real thing. It does have meaning, and 6 billion years of evolution, characterized by mass extinctions and brutal lives and weeping and the gnashing of teeth, all have conspired to produce in you, through the process of lineage selection, the sense of meaning that guides your actions in such a way that is not only good for you, but good for your community and your entire lineage of fellow human beings, most of which have yet to be born. As much as some people might be convinced that meaning is a made-up human concept, understand that it is not only not made up, it may be the most fundamental and real part of this hallucinogenic experience we call reality. So the next time you find yourself engaged in something meaningful, remember that you are participating in a process far more ancient and transcendent than anything that your feelings and immediate experience can convey to you. Or, to put it in the words of a fictional character yet to be written, may the wisdom of your ancestors guide you into eternity. And so with that, as always, good luck and Godspeed.